This man is named Henry, a god-level sniper who has never missed his target, which is currently waiting for his target, who is traveling on a high-speed train. With very precise calculations and perfect timing, he managed to kill the target, which is impossible for ordinary snipers. After his task was completed, Henry immediately went home. But a moment later he was visited by his boss to congratulate Henry on the success of his mission. But who would have thought that the boss was surprised to learn that Henry wanted to retire because he was starting to be haunted by guilt over the deaths of the 72 people he had shot. A few days later Henry went to a pier to rent a small boat, and there he was greeted by a female rental guard named Danny. Apparently Henry's goal was to meet his old friend named Jack, who was also a member of DIA. There Henry was told by Jack that his last target was not a terrorist as Henry knew, but a highly respected molecular biologist. Jack also reminded Henry to be vigilant. This is where Henry realized that he had been trapped by his boss. Jack then suggested Henry to meet someone named Yuri who would explain everything. Elsewhere, it turns out that their conversation is being tracked by the leaders of DIA. And for reasons we don't yet know, these leaders intend to kill Henry. On the way home he accidentally finds a tracking device on his boat. Henry suspects Danny is a spy, but Danny manages to convince Henry that he is just an ordinary guard.
Did Patterson send you to surveil me?
Feeling guilty, Henry invites Danny to have coffee together as a form of apology. In the afternoon they meet there. Henry gives a bunch of flowers and a piece of paper containing Danny's personal information, which turns out to be a member of DIA.
Is Patterson running you?
Knowing this, Danny can no longer deny it and admits that he is indeed a member of DIA, but here Henry is not angry and makes a problem of it, and instead they confide in each other.
Being stuck in a tin can with a couple hundred sailors.
Meanwhile, Jack, who is on his private boat, gets a surprise attack which happens very quickly. In the middle of his nightmare, Henry woke up when he heard an alarm indicating that his territory had been infiltrated by the enemy. He immediately contacted his friend Marino to tell him to leave immediately. But unfortunately it was too late. Then, worried about Danny's safety, Henry immediately went to his house, and with a short and concise explanation, Danny believed him and went straight to the pier to prepare a ship while Henry would follow. At the pier, when Danny was going to take the ship's key, he was suddenly ambushed by a DIA member. Danny was forced to fight him. Finally they both left there. In another place, Clay and his friend were seen discussing their failure to take care of Henry, because of which Clay suggested that they immediately test their secret unit called Gemini to kill Henry. When Henry and Danny were relaxing, Henry's friend named Baron came, who was also a member of DIA who had been separated from Henry for quite a long time. Without further ado, Baron immediately took them both to his house to hide from DIA. Before arriving home, they took the time to stop at an old building where Henry immediately contacted his former boss at DIA to ask the truth about his target, where the boss explained that he was forced to order Henry to kill the scientist because the scientist had been used by Clay for illegal purposes.
What the hell is all of this?
Okay.
Long story short, they arrived at Baron's house in Colombia, without them realizing that outside the house there was someone who was stalking the three of them. Henry, who was very alert, began to realize that there was a threat outside, so he immediately told Danny and Baron to leave the house immediately while Henry would distract and catch the person. At first Henry walked like a normal person in general without looking the slightest bit tense. Then, when Henry almost shot the man, suddenly he was stunned seeing the young man's face, which turned out to be exactly the same as his when he was young. Henry's location was immediately detected by the young man, so Henry had no choice but to run again, so that the chase was inevitable. After being freed from the chase, Henry invited them both to go to Budapest and meet someone named Yuri who would help them get more information. On the way, Danny continued to ask while treating Henry about the person who taught him yesterday, where the young man's face was very similar to Henry's. So Danny thought that the child was the result of an illicit relationship with someone. Hearing this, Henry denied it because he himself was much more curious about the child. This young man was called Junior, Clay's adopted son, who was assigned to kill Henry, who he thought was a terrorist and very dangerous to the country. Junior explained to Clay that this man was very skilled, and he also felt that Henry could know Junior's every move every time Junior was going to kill him. Not wanting his foster child to feel inferior, Clay emphasized that Junior was much better than Henry, so he believed that Junior could definitely kill him. Arriving in Budapest, Danny went to meet his friend to do a DNA test between Henry and Junior, where after the test results came out, Danny's face looked quite surprised and explained to Henry that Junior was his clone. Not long after that conversation, Henry finally met Yuri, where Yuri told Henry all the information about the reason why he was being hunted by his own boss. Yuri explained that Clay used to work with a scientist who had just been killed by Henry, and before he died they both had an argument, so the scientist chose to end his relationship with Clay. Although they both have the same vision but with different missions, where the scientist wants to produce intelligent, strong and great clones, while Clay wants to produce army clones from Henry's DNA by removing the human side in him. So the reason Clay will kill Henry is because Clay already has a clone, so he doesn't need Henry anymore. After finishing with Yuri, Henry immediately contacted his former boss to negotiate, where he threatened his former boss and asked to remove Danny from the target list. That night Henry let Danny be taken by Junior with the aim that Danny could survive an accidental death. Danny was taken to a basement where Junior immediately held Danny and set several traps to anticipate if there were intruders who wanted to save Danny. When tied up, Danny began to indoctrinate Junior by saying that Henry was not a bad person and that Henry was the victim of the brutality of the soldier named Gemini. But Junior, who had been programmed, actually covered Danny's mouth with duct tape, but suddenly, yes, Henry easily passed Junior's trap and cornered him, where he immediately disarmed every weapon belonging to Junior. After freeing Danny, Henry asked Junior to listen to him, where he said that Junior was a clone of himself 25 years ago, and to prove it all Henry explained all their similarities about his preferences, allergies and even the trauma he had had so far. But when Henry entered the explanation about Junior, who was still a virgin at the age of 23, Junior immediately went berserk. And
About him. They're just trying to rattle me.
I'm trying.
after injuring Junior's right shoulder, they both asked Baron to take him to Georgia, where Clay was.
That poor kid.
Meanwhile, in another place, Junior talked privately with Clay, where he asked his adoptive father for an explanation about who he really was and whether he was really a clone of his adoptive father's enemy. Like being struck by lightning in broad daylight, Junior could only cry when Clay told the truth that he was really a clone of Henry. When they had landed, Junior was suddenly waiting and immediately shot bee venom into Henry's neck, which made him unable to breathe because of the allergies he had suffered from so far. With a face full of sadness, Junior finally gave Henry the antidote. He did it just to make sure whether he was really Henry's clone, and now he believes what Henry said. After removing a chip from Henry's body, Junior is now on Henry's side, where their goal this time is only to kill Clay, who has caused suffering for everyone. In the middle of the road, Junior gets a call from Clay, his adoptive father, where Junior is asked to get out of the car and leave them all.
This is Junior.
And although Danny and Henry survived the missile shot, unfortunately Baron became a victim of Clay's cruelty. There Henry and Junior separated, where Henry fought against the Gemini while Junior went to his adoptive father's place to make calculations so that the shooting and fighting were inevitable. Junior then went to help Henry, who was in trouble with Danny, where they both only had one bullet to fight several soldiers. Clay, who was still conscious, ordered one of the fastest Gemini members, who was strong without emotion and had no pain, to immediately finish off Henry and Junior, who had now defected. And yes, even though dozens of shots managed to hit him right in the legs, hands, chest, and even the head, it didn't hurt the Gemini at all. And he could still move freely and agilely against Henry and Junior without experiencing the slightest difficulty. With a fairly long fight, Gemini was finally defeated with great difficulty, which surprised them because they saw that Gemini was Junior's junior or Henry's second clone.
Don't you feel pain?
Clay came to their place filled with emotion. Junior immediately pointed his rifle at Clay to kill him immediately because he didn't want his twin to have the same fate as himself, who was haunted by regret. Henry also asked Junior not to kill his adoptive father because if that happened he would regret it for the rest of his life. With various motivations from Henry, Junior finally gave in and gave the weapon to Henry because he was afraid of having nightmares like Henry had said. Long story short, a few months later, Junior is now studying at a private school where Henry gave Junior a new identity so that he could live as someone else without having to be in Henry's shadow. It only took 6 months for Junior to graduate, and from an unreliable source it was reported that Junior had started his new business as a security guard in front of 7-Eleven.